In terms of Rocky Balboa's opponents, it's typically agreed that the least antagonistic of them all is Apollo Creed, who would go on to be one of Rocky's close friends. However, there is one opponent Rocky has faced that would also fit in this category, or perhaps that is overlooked as the least antagonistic of them all, Mason Dixon. While I previously stated in my Tommy Gunn video that Tommy at least had more depth, after giving Rocky Balboa a fresh rewatch, maybe there's more to Mason's character than we thought. Does Mason share some parallels with both Apollo Creed and Tommy Gunn? Is his character meaningful, or is he just the guy that's in Rocky's way to fight what's in the basement? This is why Mason Dixon is underrated. Let's talk about his struggles, his fight with Rocky, comparisons, and more. Let's recap what we know about Mason Dixon so far. Feel free to skip ahead to avoid the recap, but be warned, you may miss some important details later on in the video. Not much is known about Mason's early life, though his trainer Martin comments that Dixon had started attending the gym as young as 10 years old. It's not clear exactly when he turned pro, but the time 2006 rolls around, he is the undefeated heavyweight champion, with 33 wins, 30 of them being by knockout. However, the reception of Mason as champion isn't well received due to a lack of challenging contenders and the decline of boxing. After confiding in his former trainer Martin how he feels, he returns to his home to see ESPN simulating a dream match between himself and Rocky Balboa. The computer predicts that Balboa will knock out Dixon, and Dixon's team denounces the simulation to try to save face for Mason. Dixon is then approached by Lou DiBella and his manager LC to try to take an exhibition fight with Balboa to take advantage of the hype of the computer simulation. He at first refuses until his team reminds him about his reputation as champion, the last 2 pay-per-views being rejected, and the lack of worthwhile contenders. Dixon seemingly refuses and walks out to talk to Martin, but agrees to the fight off screen as LC and Lou convince Rocky to take the fight. At the press conference, Dixon jokes around until the credibility of him as champion is called into question, to which he fires back that if he gets pissed, this guy will get hurt. Mason resumes training under Martin at the old gym, and after the weigh-in, talks to Rocky personally about the fight, warning if Rocky tries to hurt him, he will end the fight quickly. Mason dominates the first round, though mentions Rocky has bricks in his gloves, and Martin warns him to give his opponent respect as Rocky came to fight. In the second round, Mason drops Balboa twice, but breaks his left hand on Rocky's ribs, and soon gets knocked down by Rocky. Eventually, during the last round, Mason drops Balboa one more time, but the two finish the fight strong, trading punches until the end of the round. Dixon wins the match by split decision, earning respect not only from Rocky, but from the fans as well. To understand Mason as a character, we need to talk about his struggle. As I mentioned before, Mason doesn't have the best reception as champion because of the lack of the competition in the heavyweight division. During the opening scene, we see his 33rd straight victory, with the commentators noting another quick knockout. Even leading up to the final punch, we can hear audible boos, and when the fight is over, the fans start to pelt him with ice. Dixon is blamed not only for the decline of the heavyweight division, but also the entire sport. Although on the surface he seems unfazed or is usually joking around, we see moments where it starts to bother him, notably when he watches the fight in his car and decides to visit his old trainer Martin. His trainer even mentions that Dixon has lost his pride and self-respect, stating that he needs to be tested. Although Dixon protests that there is no worthy challenger, Martin replies that there's always someone out there who can baptize him under fire. In this conversation, we can assume that perhaps Dixon feels he's faced everybody who could give him a challenge and that he's the absolute best. Whether that was the money or fame that changed his way of thinking, with Martin even mentioning that he was fired by Dixon's team, perhaps Mason has gotten complacent and got by as champion. We even hear during the press conference that he protests, "What else do I have to do?" Similar words from another champion that faced this same problem, Tommy Gunn. During the film's main fight, we finally see Mason tested with a real contender. Despite Rocky's age and lack of speed, Mason is knocked down presumably for the first time in his career after breaking his hand on Rocky's rib and Rocky's signature strategy of attacking the body. This is a stark contrast to the beginning of the film, where the commentator stated in his 33rd fight that Dixon needed opponents that could fight back. Throughout the fight, Mason trades punches with Balboa. Even before the 10th round, we see Dixon exhausted for the first time in his career. Before the bell rings, Martin remarks that Dixon finally has his pride and self-respect, with Dixon even complimenting Rocky by calling him a crazy old man. Despite knocking Rocky down again, Rocky ends the fight trading punches with Dixon, calling him a great champion. This fight ends up testing Mason so much that the match results in a split decision, as Rocky and Mason would trade off winning rounds, though Dixon would ultimately win the fight. Finally facing adversity, Dixon earns respect from Rocky and the crowd, and respects himself. Despite his limited appearance and what details we know about his character, Mason shares some parallels with some previously seen characters in the Rocky franchise. Like some of his predecessors, Mason Dixon is a world champion, alongside Apollo Creed, Rocky Balboa, Clubber Lang, and Tommy Gunn. Mason has an undefeated streak of 33 fights, similar to Apollo Creed, who was undefeated for 47 fights, at least according to the canon of the Rocky games. Whether Apollo's streak is canon or not is up for debate, but I think it's plausible for him to have at least a very similar streak before fighting Balboa. Although it's never explicitly stated, I would also believe that similar to Apollo, Mason is knocked down for the first time in his career thanks to Rocky. Rocky manages to also go the distance with Dixon, though in 10 rounds, the first time any of Dixon's opponents were able to do so. Another parallel that Mason shares with Apollo is that he gives Rocky a chance to fight in the limelight, though this time not for a title. Dixon even fights very similarly to Apollo, relying on his speed and reach to keep opponents away, while constantly popping a jab. Dixon's credibility as champion is called into question due to the quality of opponents he faced, a similar struggle not only faced by Tommy Gunn, who was called a paper champion, but perhaps also Union Kane, who never won the title from Balboa. This happens during the press conference where, similar to Apollo in Rocky II, gets mad at the press for not taking the fight seriously or himself as a champion. Another notable parallel is that, similar to both Adonis Creed and Tommy Gunn, Mason is perhaps caught in the shadow of larger-than-life legends of yesterday, specifically that of Rocky Balboa and Apollo Creed. Like Rocky and Apollo, Dixon had Martin not only as a coach and trainer, but as a father figure similar to Mickey or Duke. In another parallel to Tommy Gunn, Dixon didn't have managers who had his best interests. George Washington Duke took advantage and tempted Tommy with fame and fortune. Both Tommy and Mason were portrayed by real-life boxers, Tommy Morrison and Antonio Tarver, respectively. Lastly, Dixon ends up defeating Rocky in a split decision like Apollo did, ending the match as champion, though the difference here is that the match was an exhibition. Let's briefly talk a bit about Mason Dixon's fighting style. Mason fights using the orthodox stance. As I briefly mentioned earlier, Dixon is similar to Apollo as they are both quick and pop out the jab to keep their opponent at bay. Dixon's height and range, like Apollo, give him a clear advantage as he can effortlessly move in and out of the way. Mason then goes in for combinations or a vicious right hook, as we see at the beginning of the film in the fight with Rocky, which knocks him down twice. He's not reliant on this right hook, however, as his straight left manages to make Rocky stumble and also knock him down on one occasion. Dixon can trade punches, though soon underestimates the strength of Balboa. Mason, however, is not immortal. When knocked down in the second round, it's noted that he's never taken punishment like this in his career, proving that he was never really tested in his prior fights. Despite his top conditioning, Mason is still no match for Rocky's signature attacking the body strategy, as Mason is in pain every time Rocky goes to the body. Similarly to my Tommy Gunn video, we have to also talk about Antonio Tarver, the Magic Man and the real-life boxer who portrayed Dixon. At the time of production, Tarver was the light heavyweight champion. During his amateur career, he was the United States Amateur Light Heavyweight Champion in 1993 and 1995, the 1994 National Golden Gloves Light Heavyweight Champion, and won the light heavyweight bronze medal for the United States at the 1996 Olympics. Tarver is also the only boxer in history to win gold at the Pan Am Games, World Championships, and U.S. Nationals all in the same year, 1995. Antonio's record is 31 wins, 6 losses, and 1 draw, with notable wins over Reggie Johnson, Roy Jones Jr., and Clinton Woods. With all of this into account, who is Mason Dixon based on? Just like with previous films in the franchise, Rocky Balboa has some biographical material based on Sylvester Stallone's life. On the DVD commentary for Rocky Balboa, Stallone explains that Mason Dixon is based on himself, a man who has made some bad decisions after taking advice from people who really didn't have his best interest. It should also be noted that the fight between Dixon and Balboa is based on the fight between George Foreman and Michael Moore that also took place in Vegas in 1994. This took place during Foreman's second comeback of his boxing career, where he challenged the much younger champion who was 26 at the time, while Foreman was 45, who ironically had not fought since being defeated by Tommy Morrison. Foreman was an underdog in this fight and was outboxed by Moore for the first 9 rounds. However, in the 10th round, Foreman made a comeback and floored Moore with a right and became champion after Moore couldn't reach the 10 count. As the film also makes mention of it, the simulation between Mason Dixon and Rocky Balboa is based on the Super Fight, a computer simulation that pits Muhammad Ali versus Rocky Marciano, where the computer determined Marciano would win the fight in the 13th round, though European audiences at the time were shown a cut where Ali won the fight. The film also mimics the decline of the heavyweight division at that time, where it instead has Mason Dixon as the champion during this era. There are also speculations that Dixon being spoon-fed his opponents and having an undefeated record was based on Floyd Mayweather Jr. What happened to Mason Dixon after the events of Rocky Balboa? While Mason is never mentioned again by name in future films, I would like to propose a theory that hints at Mason's involvement in the Creed franchise. When Rocky trains Adonis for his match with Leo Sparino, he takes Adonis to the Front Street Gym instead of Mighty Mix, so the two opponents do not train in the same place. Rocky introduces his friends, one of them being Jacob Stitch Duran, the cut man who later in the film helps Adonis respond to the referee's question of how many fingers he's holding up by tapping his fingers on the back of Donnie's neck. Prior to this film, Stitch was also seen as the cut man for Mason Dixon in his fight against Rocky Balboa. While Duran is a cut man in real life, given the fact that Mason and Rocky have mutual respect at the end of their fight, it wouldn't be that unlikely that Rocky would call Dixon for a favor, who is now retired, and ask for some help gathering a crew together for his student, Adonis Creed. Yes, Rocky states that Duran is the best cutman in Philly, though I wonder if at some point after Dixon retired, Duran moved and became a cutman for other fighters now that Dixon no longer fights. There are theories that Dixon may have crossed paths with Danny Wheeler, perhaps even Ricky Conlon, but we have no in-universe proof of that unless a future Creed film establishes what happened to Mason. Here are my final thoughts on Mason Dixon. Dixon is certainly the least vile out of the Rocky opponents and had a different struggle than some of his predecessors. He had to prove that he wasn't a fluke and that he could overcome a tough opponent. I believe he's often overlooked as Rocky Balboa focuses more on the dynamics of Rocky's life, coping with the loss of Adrian, the relationship with his son, and dealing with the beast in the basement. Perhaps if there were more scenes revolving around Dixon, we would be able to see more of his motivations as a character. I believe this may have been partly due to Tarver holding up the filming of the match of Balboa versus Dixon, demanding a higher salary. Stallone would give in to his demands and cut a large part of his salary to Tarver. Sly would later confirm this on Howard Stern, where he made no money from the film. I believe this may also be why he isn't mentioned in the Creed films, but like Tommy Gunn, he is still part of the canon and is partly why the Rocky Balboa film is so great. The match proved that even at an older age, Rocky could hang with the best of them, even if they were 2 decades younger. Perhaps the real dream match would be Rocky from Rocky 3 versus Mason Dixon. I think that would be a completely different story than what we saw. Before I go, I want to give a quick shout out and thanks to my partners and affiliates. I now have official merchandise. Go to strifethewarrior.art or click on any of the merchandise below the comments section. Like Rocky Jr. said to Rocky while he was fighting Mason Dixon, you have to keep your hands up to defend yourself. And nothing's truer than that statement when it comes to protecting your privacy. Go to nordvpn.com/strifethewarrior or use coupon code StrifeTheWarrior to get a NordVPN 2-year plan with a huge discount. You can use NordVPN to unlock Netflix and your favorite entertainment websites that are not available here in the US. You can connect up to 6 devices at the same time with one account. There's no data logging whatsoever and it works even in China. NordVPN works with Windows, Mac OS, Linux, iOS, and Android, has a Chrome extension which is very user-friendly and unlimited bandwidth. If you're not happy with it for any reason, there's a 30-day money-back guarantee. With 7 World Heavyweight Championships under its belt, it's no wonder why NordVPN is a winner. If you use this code, you also help directly support my channel. So go to nordvpn.com/strifethewarrior or use coupon code StrifeTheWarrior at checkout. Last but not least, I'm sure I have a good majority of gamers here in the audience, but did you know you can grab some excellent games while supporting charities at the same time? If you haven't already, you should check out Humble Bundle. They've raised over $200 million in charity since 2010 and feature a different charity site-wide every month. If you see a bundle you like, you can pay for what you want and in return get computer programs, games, ebooks, etc. and the proceeds support charity. Go to humblebundle.com and use my referral link in the description at checkout. These referral links help support the channel, so thank you NordVPN and thank you Humble Bundle. Let me know what you guys think down below. What do you like about Mason Dixon's character? If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like it, subscribe, share it with your friends, and comment, as these all help my channel grow. Be sure to check out and subscribe to my second gaming channel. I'm trying to get this channel to 1,000 subscribers, and supporting this channel also helps me support my main channel. I'll be uploading more clips to this gaming channel, so stay tuned for that. Keep up with me on my socials via Instagram and Twitter. Thanks for watching, stay beautiful, stay awesome, and we'll catch you around next time.